Hello, welcome to Z Marie Design. Let's create a scrappy fall table runner. So let's get started. I first chose 2 focal fabric from my fabric stash. One of my fabrics has a fall theme, but if yours does not have a fall theme, just fall colors will do. My inspiration came when I found these fall leaf appliques in my fabric stash that I had from a previous project. I'll add those to the topper. After choosing my 2 focal fabrics, I chose additional fabrics within my stash in the same color scheme. Now my fabrics measure 6.5 inches square. You can use any size squares that you like. You'll just need more squares to make the same size table topper. My table topper is going to measure approximately 66 inches long by 24 inches wide. So I lay out my 6.5 inch squares by 11 squares in length, and I'm going to have 4 rows. So I lay them out in the order that I like to see. Now once I'm pleased with the layout, 11 squares across and 4 rows down, I'm going to stack my 11 squares to make it easier to transport to the sewing machine. So once all 4 of my rows are in stacks, at the sewing machine I will start with row 1. And I'm going to sew my squares right sides facing with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'll press that one open, and I'm just going to do a finger press at the sewing machine. And the next square, right sides facing, 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'll continue to do that until each of my stacks are completely sewn in rows of 11. So now I have 4 rows. Each squares are 11 in each row. I'm going to press my seams so that first row the seams are all pressed to the right, the second row seams to the left, third row the seams are pressed to the right, and the fourth row the seams are pressed to the left. This will make it easier once I sew these 2 rows together. So I start by right sides facing, sewing row 1 to row 2. And I'm going to start by matching those intersections first. I'm going to pin those in place. And then I will fill in with pins after that. So my first row, I'm going to make sure that each of those intersecting seams are pinned first. And I'll pin all the way down, and I'll take it to the sewing machine, and I'll sew 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I will do the same thing with row 3 to row 4. So now row 1 and row 2 is sewn together, and row 3 is sewn to row 4. I'm going to press that seam. Row 3 and row 4, I'll press that seam down, and row 1, row 2, I'll press that seam up. Next is to connect these 2 together. So that's row 2 to row 3, right sides facing. Once again, I'm going to start by pinning at each of those intersecting seams first, filling in with the pins, and taking it to the sewing machine. Sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now the table runner is completely sewn together. I'm going to press this seam up. And make sure that it's all pressed. And next I'll create a quilt sandwich. The back part of my table runner will be this beige muslin. So I'm going to pin it down to the floor, and I have it measuring so that it is several inches wider than my table topper on all sides. I pin it at each of the corners and in the middle. I then put down my cotton batting. I have it a little wider than my table topper. And then I put the table topper on the top of the quilt sandwich. And then I'm going to pin it all 3 layers, making sure that there are no wrinkles in the backing fabric, that's the muslin, in the cotton batting, or in the table topper. And now I have it pinned together, ready to be quilted. But before I take it to the sewing machine, I'm going to trim off some of this excess batting and some of the excess backing fabric. It's better to have more pins than less pins because you don't want this table topper to shift on you when you take it to the sewing machine for quilting. I'm just going to do a quilting in the ditch, horizontally and vertically, and then I will also do quilting on the diagonal of each of these squares. So I trimmed off the sides, so I only have a few inches on each side and a few inches at the top and the bottom. So this is what it looks like when I've quilted, stitched it in the ditch, straight stitch on the horizontal and on the vertical of each of the rows. Then I chose a decorative stitch on the diagonal of each of the squares in both directions, taking out my pins as I quilted, and I did the quilting with a walking foot. And this is what it looks like on the back on the muslin. Now I also did a stay stitch all the way around on all 4 sides of the edges. So the next step is to trim and to square up this table topper. I put my ruler at the bottom row and on the side, and just make sure that everything is square before I trim off that excess batting and the excess backing fabric. Best to measure twice and cut once. You see I have my fingers on the outside of the ruler as I walk my fingers up the ruler as I rotary cut along each side to keep the ruler from shifting as I do my cutting. Matching the side, matching the top square. Keep your ruler from shifting. Just have your couple fingers there on the outside of that ruler and walk your fingers up as you continue up the side there with your rotary cutter. And you just do this on all 4 sides to trim it up. Now, if you have experience in quilting, this step looks very familiar. If you're new to quilting, you do this exact same process if you were quilting a larger quilt. I just have it on a small table since this is just a table runner and I'm just moving the table runner. If this was a full-size quilt, I would have it on the floor or on a larger table. So as I get to the top, you see my top line on my ruler meets the top edge there, and then the side seam, I'm making sure the cut part is measured, and then I just cut the remaining part, and the table topper is all squared and trimmed. Now on to my applique. Now these leaves already have some Pellon fusible web already on the back of those from a previous project. And I'll just peel off the paper and I'll fuse these in place. But as I put them down, I was trying to put them on the parts, on just the plain squares that I had, not on my focal fabric. I just found that the quilt topper was a bit sparse when it came to leaves. This is a fall table topper, so I wanted lots of leaves. So I just downloaded a free printable from the internet, and I just got my light box, and again with my Pellon 805 fusible. It's paper on one side and it's fusible on the other. So I'm going to make sure that I put the paper side facing up so that I can trace these leaves onto the paper side. And I'm just using my marker to trace these, and I'm not just being really careful when I'm tracing them. I just want a general leaf shape onto this Pellon. And then I'm going to get some more fabric scraps. This is a fall scrappy table runner in my color schema that I have, and I'm going to fuse these leaves onto the back of fabric scraps. So before I fuse them on, I'm going to do a rough cut around these leaves, and since I'm using scraps, I'm not going to fuse the entire sheet of leaves onto one piece of fabric. So I'm just going to trim them down to fit the fabric scrap. And on the back side of the fabric scrap, I will fuse paper side up is what you're fusing, so follow the manufacturer's instructions to fuse it down. And once I fused it to the fabric scrap, I'm going to let it cool off, and then I will trim off that leaf shape. And as you saw from my printable, I have lots of leaf shapes, so I'm just going to continue to trace on my fusible as many leaf shapes as I think I like. And this is fall, so I wanted lots of leaf shapes, and I did it in lots of different colors of fabric scraps. Once it's all cooled off, after I've cut it out, I'm going to score it with a pin. Makes it easier to remove the paper backing. And once you remove that paper backing, you'll be able to see the fusible on there, and you'll be able to feel it too. It'll be shiny and it'll feel a little tacky to the fingers. You'll know that that's the fusible side. And then I will place all of my fusibles on my quilt topper until it's pleasing to me. I also found these leaves shapes that I had from a previous project that has some fusible on top. But before I cut those the fusible off, I just made some additional tracings around the Pellon fusible web to have that leaf shape to it. So I took off the fusible web, and I'm just going to continue to put them all around until I like what I see. And I have several leaf shapes on. I'll do the same procedure onto other fabric scraps. And you make sure that you do your cutout before you take the paper off. So I'll cut those off. So I did do the cutout first, and then remove the paper on some additional fabric scraps that I found in my stash, and made some additional leaves. This is fall in Wisconsin, so we have lots of leaves everywhere. So now I have my leaves all on my quilt topper in places that I like. I'm going to now fuse those down. Just follow manufacturer's instructions. I also found some other trees that had fusible on the back from a previous project. You see that lime green tree? I just added that on there too. Just trying to not put them on top of my focal fabric, but put them on the other fabric squares that I have. And then I'll take it to the sewing machine, and I'm going to do free motion stitching around each of the edges. And I'm going to free motion stitch the veins inside each of the leaves. I think it'll go faster. So now I'm at my machine, and I have my Bernina stitch regulator on, my BSR. Now you can also just use your free motion foot and lowering your feed dogs on your sewing machine. I'm using a 90-10 needle to quilt through all of this. I'm going to do free motion stitching, but I'm going to use a zigzag stitch for my free motion stitching. I'm lowering my presser foot, I'm lowering my needle. I'm going to raise my needle to bring up my bobbin thread, pulling it up with my tweezers just to make sure that I don't have any nesting, fabric nesting on the back with the threads. And then I'm going to free motion stitch. I'm putting on my free motion on my quilting gloves all the way around the edges because this is going to be a table runner. I anticipate it going to be washed quite a bit, so I don't want any fraying on the edges of these appliques, and I want to make sure that the appliques stay down. So I'm using a zigzag stitch as my free motion. Now if you don't have this option to zigzag in the free motion, you can always use your straight stitch as your free motion and just go around on the inside edge. Or you don't have to free motion, you can just use your zigzag stitch and just use a straight zigzag stitch around each of these appliques. Now I've come to the beginning part of that free motion stitching. I'm going to now change it to a straight stitch because I want to create the veins on each of these leaves. Now this is that double leaf pattern that I had. I'm going to start with a center vein on there. Following that same stitch pattern back, I'm going to go to the right and to the left to create veins. Following the stitch again, go down and creating veins. You can create as many veins as you like. I think I do about 3 on each of these, 3 sets of each vein. Go all the way back down to the starting point. Since this is a double leaf, I'm going to come back up on that other side of that leaf on the center stem, and then I'm going to go out to the right, to the left of the vein, back following the stitch line, to the right and to the left, creating a vein, following again that center stitch line, to the right and to the left. And I'm continuing to following the stitch line, but I'm not being extra careful to follow it, so if I get off, it's okay until I get back to the beginning, and then I'm going to trim my threads. And you can see what those veins look like that when they're all stitched. And I will do that around each leaf that's on this project. Now I find it faster to use the free motion stitching because I have lots of leaves on this project. Now I'll do it again on the single leaf using the exact same steps, and I'm using that zigzag stitch around the edges. And if I get off and I miss part of the edge, I just come back over and fill it in again and just keep going. Now I'm trying to adjust my quilt top. I have it rolled up on the long ends, but I'm trying to adjust it so that I don't have a lot of drag on each side. And again, just trying to adjust. But if you have a lot of drag on there, that's what's going to happen to you. It's going to skip the stitch, and it broke my thread. So I ended up having to rethread it and go back over again and redo that zigzag stitch. And now I'm just creating that center vein with that straight stitch. Sorry there for the glare, but you'll be able to see the vein once I'm all done. You'll see a better look at it. But again, I just follow that center vein and go to the right and to the left to create those veins off to each side. And you can see what it looks like. And again, I'm doing it on this last leaf here. You see, I also did the zigzag free motion around the tree. And these trees I had from a previous project, and I just did those freehand. I just drew right onto the Pellon fusible webbing, and then I did the rough cut around that tree, and then I put it on the fabric and cut it out. So once again, I'm back to the zigzag stitch, and I'm just following the pattern here of what the leaf looks like. So once we're done doing all of our fusibles, our last step is to do the binding. You see I haven't added a binding yet to this. And then you'll be all done. The longest that it took me was to do the free motion stitching around each of the leaves and creating the veining. So I do a center vein line, following that same stitch line, go to the right, to the left, following the same stitch line to the right and to the left, following again that center stitch line to the right and to the left, and follow it all the way back down to the beginning. And then I cut my threads. And you'll be able to see it at the end, all of the stitching on each of the leaves. So this is what it looks like once you've created all of your stitching on your leaves. And I used green thread for all of my leaves. You can change your color of your thread, or you can use a different color thread. I just used green because I wanted it to stand out. So now I'm going to attach the binding, and I'm going to leave a link in the description of how to create the binding. I just did a scrappy binding from 2.5 inch strips. I'll leave a link in the description on how to attach your binding. But once your binding is attached, I turned it to the wrong side, and I used machine stitched it down, and my table runner is complete. And I'll show you what it looks like on my table as I set the table. But you can see the scrappy fall look, and this is what all the stitching and the quilting looks like from the back. So you really could use either side. So this is what it looks like on my table, and I have several inches at the top and several inches on both sides of the table runner. And then as I continue to set the table, I added some candles, I added some additional silk fall leaves that I had in my stash. I just kind of threw those along the table, and some other foliage. And this is what my fall table runner looks like. So I hope you like this project, and I hope you'll give it a try. Thanks for watching.